Welcome to year 2 of A Mick, a Mook, and a Mike.
Hosted by 4-time Emmy-nominated producer
Frank Pace. And retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guests, Hall of Fame Sportscaster, Charley Steiner.
Dun, da, da, da.
That's a hell of an opening.
Da, 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 da. How are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful, my brother. How you doing? Everything's good.
Good. How are you, my friend Derek?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. Good.
Life is good. Life is good.
Super Bowl's coming up.
Yeah, that's the deal, man. Cincinnati's in it, huh?
Cincinnati's in it. The Rams are in it. Charley Steiner will be our guest, talking about past Super Bowls, past and present.
The voice of the Dodgers, correct?
Currently the voice of the Dodgers, formerly the voice of NFL football. He was the Jets play-by-play announcer. He was on the NFL. So he's got a pretty good background. He doesn't know anything about the game coming up, but we'll talk about everything.
Yeah,
55 years leading up and what he thinks will happen in the future.
Well, I got a feeling. I mean, it's the Rams against the Bengals, and it's at the Rams' new stadium. How many billions did that cost? That new stadium?
A lot, almost as much as a seat to the game.
So you got to figure that the NFL kind of like to see the Rams win, I would guess.
By the way, some of the parking spaces alone are costing $4,000.
Really?
That's crazy.
$4,000 for a parking spot at the game?
Yeah, I've seen tickets on the aftermarket as high as $30,000, and parking is $4,000 because the parking spots that they have are all taken up by corporate hospitality tents. So where people would park. So I got a feeling they're parking at the airport and shuttling over. I don't know what I would do. I know. I sent Johnny Bench a note. I said, "You coming out? If you're coming out, let me know." And he says, "I got a seat right on the 50-yard line on the sofa."
Smart enough.
Yep.
I wouldn't pay that. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, just for a parking spot, that's like, I remember years ago when they first started selling parking spots in New York. Like they're almost like condos. You can get a parking spot for $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
I know that's insane.
I mean, I can't imagine paying $4,000.
The first Super Bowl, I couldn't give the tickets away.
Well, I'll tell you a story. At the 1980, what is it? When I first met Charley, it was the 1981 Super Bowl. No, it wasn't 81. It was 1981 Super Bowl in New Orleans, and I went with Jay Thomas, and because his mother grew up.
He's a big New Orleans fan.
Yeah, and his mom lived in New Orleans at the time, and we had 8 tickets separate. So the day before, the face value of the tickets was $40. $40 in 1981. The day before, we sold 4 tickets at $120 a piece. So we said, boy, we can't wait till we get to the game tomorrow. We'll sell the other 2 sitting next to us for,
probably 500. Yeah.
Well, not 500, but at least 120. We gave them away for $30. We sold them beneath face value
because nobody wanted them. Or?
There was a lot of tickets for that game. I mean, the first game. We'll talk about this with Charley. Also, the first Super Bowl game was tickets cost $12 to get in.
They couldn't give them away.
Between $12 and $90. Yeah.
It was out in L.A. too, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. They couldn't give them away. I mean, that was everybody just expected the NFL to crush the AFC, and they were right.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
The first
for
2
years.
Yeah, they did.
Why don't you tell me tell me a few gambling stories about your Super Bowl gambling days?
Super Bowl, I tell you, actually, in my first book, which Confessions of a Bronx Bookie, which is still kind of near dear to my heart.
Can we see it?
My first one, yeah, sure. Confessions of a Bronx Bookie. Available on Amazon and
was that on camera?
No, it's always above
frame. Isn't that the camera?
Oh. You have to put it in front of your face.
In front of your face.
But actually, it's interesting. The line on this game, Cincinnati, and I'll get back to the book in a second. because there's a really interesting story in there. There's a lot of interesting stories in there, but one particular about a Super Bowl. You couldn't change a line right now. Like the line opened up at 3.5 initially. Right after the other game was over, right after the Rams were in the Super Bowl, it opened up Rams as 3.5-point favorite. And 50.5 was the total. The very next day, the line went down to 49.5, and then it went from 3.5, the Rams up to 4. Right now, some quarters they got it at 4.5 already. Right, 4.5 Rams. Now the thing is, the total dropped to 48.5. So it's dropped 2 points since it opened, which is, it's. But the number 4 and 3.5, the difference between 3.5, 4, and 4.5 are very significant numbers in gambling for a bookmaker. Like if I'm a bookmaker and I change a line from 1.5 to 2.5, that's a bookie's number. The game ain't going to fall. Chances are 1.5, 2.5. When you start getting to 3, 3.5, and 4, 4.5, those are money numbers. So, for example, if
I don't want a history lesson, I want a fucking story.
All right, hang on, I'll give you a story. But if the line say 4.5, from 4 to 4.5, I tell you how significant it is. If it opens up and Cincinnati kicks a field goal,
right?
You need 2 scores to get beat. A touchdown don't do it anymore. So if near the end of the game, if Cincinnati's winning by 3, and you got that 4.5, that's huge compared to a 4.
Well, suppose you're a gambler and Kansas City gave up the 3 points before the halftime. If they had kicked a field goal, Kansas City would be in the Super Bowl today.
You mean in the playoff game? That was really mismanagement. And by Mahomes, I was surprised. And, of course, Andy Reid's been around forever.
I believe Andy Reid was talked into it by Mahomes. So
really stupid.
That'll be the last time.
They really choked. I mean, look, the second half of that game,
yes.
Was
so
all over the
you
place.
Talk about 3, 3.5, 4. That makes the point
huge.
Right there.
It's huge. 4 and 4.5 is huge. So I see every bookmaker in the country. 90% of them. I look at, like, you pull up the NFL Las Vegas lines and you see how the line movement goes. You're looking at about 12 bookmakers out in Vegas. Sands, all the different hotels, Bally. And most of them are at 4.5. My guy, who's really cute, he's like a wise guy bookie, he's like, he deals with a lot of wise guys. He's got 4, lay 05. And if you like the other side and take the 4, which is Cincinnati, you got to lay 115. Now, let me explain that to this.
Thank you.
Well, normally when you make a bet, let's say on $1,000 bet, you got to pay 10% juice. So it's $1,100 to win 1,000.
Right.
No matter if you take the other side, it's $1,100 to win 1,000. But when they start playing with the juice, for example, $5,000 bet at 05, well, now you're laying $5,250 to win 5,000. If you take the other side plus 115, laying 115, now you got to lay $5,750 to win 5,000. So that's a lot of difference on the juice. So 05 and 15 is he's telling you, my bookie is saying, you want to bet the favorite, you want to bet the Rams, come in and lay for 05, which is $105 to win 100 all day long. But if you want to take the 4, take Cincinnati, you got to lay 115 to win 100.
Gotcha.
So he's telling you, come on, bet me the Rams.
Gotcha.
I'll take the Rams all day long for now. But he'll probably change that number later. But here's the deal. When a line first opens at 3.5, say the Rams, early money, you can change a line with not that much money because only the wise guys, the smart money, bets early. The general public ain't betting until Super Bowl Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
That's the day they're going to bet. Now, maybe let's say you bet $1 million. Somebody bets $1 million on the Rams at 3.5.
Only Phil Mickelson bets $1 million.
Well, there's people out there. That line's going to pop to 4 right away. Right? On Super Bowl Sunday, you could bet $100 million.
Can't move the line.
You ain't going to move a line from 4 to 4.5. It ain't going to happen because there's so much money out there.
Right.
And let me tell you how cute they are. Now, I'm a nickel and dimer, always was. But when I was bookmaking, our first year, we didn't know at the time that nobody wins. Nobody wins. Believe me, but I'm telling you, you gamble on football, you're a loser. I don't care who you are, what you think you know. math is a pure science. You know, it's just 10% is 10%.
Right.
You're going to lose. But we were under the mistaken impression that we could get beat up on Super Sunday because it's a big day. You get more money, obviously, on Super Bowl Sunday than you do any other action day of the year. You know, it's a huge day for bookies. And Washington, Joe Gibbs was the coach at the time. Doug Williams was the quarterback. They were playing Denver in the Super Bowl. It was 1988.
San Diego.
Was it in San Diego?
Yeah.
They're playing Denver. And it was 1988. And we had made a ton of money that year. It was our first year in business. That's why I remember it so much. So we were worried we were going to get beat up because Washington, we thought we're going to, which you shouldn't have an opinion if you're a bookmaker, but we thought Washington was going to kill Denver. So the three of us got together. They said, look, Billy, why don't you go out to Vegas, take $50,000, and as soon as the line opens, as soon as that playoff game is over.
Oh, I think it was
87?
88. Yeah,
88.
Jack Murphy Stadium in San Diego. Yeah. 88.
So I go out to Vegas. I got $50,000, right? And as soon as that line goes up, my plan is to bet Washington -3 for $50,000, right? And that's going to protect our office. That's not my money. That's all our office's money. Because we figured the general public's going to come in and bet Washington. It'll go up to 3.5, 4. We'll sell it to our players at 4. You know, and I'll have the $50,000 bet to cover us at 3, and we might get lucky and win both bets. Anyway, I go up to the window. This is right after the NFL playoffs, the NFC playoffs. And I say, how you doing? The line's up. It's 3. I want to bet $50,000 on the Redskins. And I got the cash in my hands, and the guy goes, whoa, $50,000. Don't get caught speeding, he says to me. What are you? He says, you can't just walk in off the street and bet $50,000. I said, this is Las Vegas. What are you talking about? I would have bet $50,000. He goes, no, we ain't taking $50,000. Now, like I said, this is like 2 minutes after the NFC Championship. So I says, well, what do you take? He said, I'll take $5,000. So I punch out the $5,000. He goes, boom, 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 boom. And he puts it through the computer. And this is back in 88. And it looks like 2001: A Space Odyssey. You know, it goes through all, and he punches out the ticket. You got Washington -3 for $5,000. I said, all right. So I start to walk away. He goes, hey, come here. You want another $5,000 and 3? I says, yeah. Because the plan was to put $50,000. So I put another $5,000 down. He goes, blah, 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 goes through the whole computer out to every casino in Vegas. He gives me the ticket for 3. And he says, now the line is 3.5. So for stinking $10,000,
You moved the line.
I moved a Super Bowl line. But like I said, on Super Bowl Sunday, you couldn't move that line for $1 million or $2 million.
Right.
Because there's so much money wagered.
Right.
So the wise guys bet early. So now the question is, with this game, with the Ram game.
Don't tell us who you. Don't
No,
tell
I'm not
us
gonna
who
say-
pick because we're going to tease that to save it till after Charley Steiner.
Yeah, like the whole world is waiting for my pick. But the point is, the wise guys bet early. Now, if they take $1 million, let's say they got 5 guys betting at Vegas, and they take that $200,000 a piece, they move the line from 3.5 up to 4. And this number is so significant, the 3.5 to 4 to 4.5. Would they be taking it just to drive the line up so they could come back in on Super Bowl Sunday and take the 4.5 for $10 million or $20 million? Because that's what they do. They move numbers just like they do on Wall Street.
Right.
There's no difference.
Right.
It's all about numbers.
Sure.
But yeah, so I mean, I actually moved the line for $10,000, and
That's great.
that's a true story. I mean, it's
That's great.
no bullshit.
So how'd you get rid of the other 40?
We ended up. I ended up laying 3.5 at certain places, and of course, I mean, it was all for nothing because Washington absolutely crushed.
You in Vegas with $40,000 in your pocket?
Those are the days.
What are the odds?
Those are the days when I used to belly up to the bar with a cement bag full of cocaine and a bottle of Johnny Walker Black.
I'd say send 2 hookers up to my room.
And some charming young whores. Now, what am I doing now, Frank? I'm drinking Brew Juice. I'm snorting Flomax. And I'm hoping some charming young grandmother will do me a favor.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
sure.
Big difference.
You got another?
I got
Yeah.
a question before we move to the next thing. Hold on. So how did you learn? I know that you were an avid gambler. I know you spent half your life,
Giving away money.
Yeah. So how did you learn how to do this? Did you have a mentor? Did you have someone who
It was a
set
guy.
you up?
There's a guy named Jimmy Thompson. I write about him in the Confessions with Bronx Bookie too. And Jimmy was a huge bookmaker in Staten Island. Now, we called the Verrazano Bridge in New York the Guinea Gangplank, right? Because out in Staten Island, it's all Italians, right? And like a lot of mob guys are out in Staten Island. That's just the way it is. And Jimmy Thompson was a guy I used to bet with. I mean, his nickname, his moniker was Julius. Everybody knew him as Julius. Julius was a huge bookmaker in Staten Island, but he was such a compulsive gambler that he pissed away everything. I mean, he lost his whole business. He couldn't stop gambling. So when he started betting with us, well, he didn't start betting with us. I called up Julius and I said, I want to get into the business. How do I do this? Because I was such a compulsive gambler, I couldn't stop gambling. Me and my partners. I said, why don't we just start taking action? So he showed me the ins and outs and told me basically, you can't lose. And he was such a compulsive gambler that he used to call us up and bet 2-time parlays, which is a $10 parlay. And here's a guy who had thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in his own business and blew it all for sports. I mean, you just can't win with sports. I'll tell you a quick story. I had a guy, Tony for Red. Red was one of my partners. And so when somebody called up, I was the marshal. So they say Tony for the marshal or Frank for the marshal if you were betting under my name, or for Red, or for Blinky, Joe for Blinky. So we know who to collect, had to collect the money. So this guy, Tony for Red, true story, Frank. Every night he'd call up at 3 or 4 games in the NBA. Every night. NBA. 1 week he loses 26 straight NBA games. Which is pretty remarkable. It's as hard to lose 26 as it is to win 26.
Sure.
I mean, a monkey could throw a dart at a board and not pick 26 straight NBA losers.
Right.
So he calls me up on Monday night. I give him his figure. He lost like 4,000 for the week or something. All right. What do you got in the NBA? I says, oh, man, Tony. So we got no NBA games tonight. I says, it's the All-Star break. I said, I got hockey. He says, hockey? What the fuck do I know about hockey? What do you know about hockey?
He lost 26 in a row betting in the NBA.
26 games in the NBA.
What do you know about the NBA?
I'm surprised nobody has to water you twice a week. What do you know about hockey? What do you know about anything? Oh, the guy was a pisser. One time he called up and he was Tony for Red. So Red told me, oh, by the way, if Tony calls, congratulate him. His wife just had a baby. Calls me up. What do you got in Dallas? I say, hey, congratulations, your wife. Hey, fuck that shit. What do you got in Dallas?
Unbelievable.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Didn't you, on one Super Bowl Sunday, misdirect phone calls?
Oh yeah, that was Blinky. That was a great move. I actually, there's another chapter here about the move that Blinky did. What happens on Super Bowl Sunday?
Wait, I want to say, did you have to pick up the book to fan through it?
Yeah, just to see if I dog-eared the page. But what happens on Super Bowl Sunday? I mean, normally on a Sunday we might write 300 tickets, which means 300 phone calls are going to come in, right? Every time somebody calls, like if you call up and say, Billy, I want the Giants for $100, I'm going to Frank Giants -4, $100. If you call back, you get a separate ticket. Every time the phone rings, it's a separate ticket.
Right.
If you bet 5 games on that call, that's no problem. It's on one ticket. But you got to, every time it's a call, it's a different ticket.
Right.
So we might write 300 tickets on a regular Sunday, maybe 400 tickets. Super Bowl Sunday, you might write 1,100 tickets. Because what happens is you're in a bar, you're watching the Super Bowl, and you want to put a bet on the game. You call me up, you bet $100 on the Rams or whatever. And then 10 minutes later, somebody sitting next to you says, well, I wish I had a bet on the game. You say, oh, you want to bet on the game? I can get you betting on the game, and then you call me up and you're betting for him or you're betting. And everybody bets a Super Bowl.
Right.
Priests, lawyers, doctors, the FBI. I mean, everybody bets a Super Bowl. It's that's just what you do.
Right.
So you might write 1,100 tickets. Now, obviously, if you're a police captain in New York, and you suspect there's a bookmaking operation going on, and you might have been monitoring that operation for 7-8 weeks, You want to bust them on Super Bowl Sunday.
Right.
Because you bust them on Super Bowl Sunday. Now they say, all right, look, we got 1,100 tickets here. They took in $50,000 worth of action. We times that by 52 weeks, and we just busted a $3 million bookmaking operation, which is, which is complete bullshit, but it sure looks good.
Sure.
They busted a $3 million. So it's a big day for us. We know we're going to get popped. I mean, if any day we're going to get popped, it's going to be Super Sunday. Matter of fact, a lot of bookmakers, this is in the old days. Now everything's offshore. Everything. But in the old days, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before Super Bowl, guys would change their offices. They'd have 2 different offices, and they'd use this office all the way up to Super Bowl and then change it because. But Blinky, we didn't have that kind of money. But Blinky gets the idea. He says, look, we got 4 phones, and they were all rollover phones because the phones would ring off the hook. He said, why don't we forward all these phones, put the forward thing on the code on the phones, and we'll put 4 phones in the apartment across the hallway. Because we were like in the worst neighborhood in the Bronx. Because Julius told us that. He said, when you get the operation, he goes, get in the worst drug-ridden, crime-ridden neighborhood you can. This way the cops got no time to be fooling around with you.
Sure.
Why are they going to bust a bookmaking operation? They're worried about drugs, shootings, So I did. It was only about 4 blocks from where I lived. But we had we gave the landlord $500, no questions asked. He gave us top floor apartment. So we give the landlord any empty apartments. He goes, there's one on the same floor. So we give him another $500. We just need it for the day. And we put 4 phones in there and forwarded all the calls to the apartment. Well, sure enough, man, phones are ringing. We're taking action. And all of a sudden we hear, bam! Bam! So stop the phones. Take the phones off the hook. Red gets up. He looks through the people. Across the hallway, there's like 5 cops. They got the riot gear on and everything, and detectives, and they're banging the door, and the door springs open, and there's 4 phones, and nobody in there. Now we hear, all kinds of, rock this, son of a bitch, But he saved the day, man. That was the fast forward saved our ass. And at the time I was still on a job. So
Great.
Could have been very awkward. Could have been very awkward.
Couldn't have showed those guys your badge.
No, they weren't going away. Yeah. But that's the deal. I mean, on a Super Bowl Sunday, bookmakers fear that day because.
Yeah.
But now everything's offshore. Everything. As a matter of fact, we had to do the work. Like you write 300 tickets. Well, we wrote them in triplicate. So Red got 1, I got 1, and Blinky got 1. And then we go home, and then the next day we do the figures. Mm-hmm. Because believe it or not, I mean, it's basic math. But you do enough basic math, and you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You're going to make maybe you do 300 tickets, you make 4 mistakes. Now the thing is, if you make a mistake in favor of the player, he ain't going to say nothing. No. He's tired of paying the bookmaker as it is. If you make a mistake in your favor, well, he's going to correct you. So now what happens, I do the work, he does the work, you write down the figures, and when there's a discrepancy on the figure, let's go back and check the work. Right. Now you got 3 guys checking the figure. And you know what's remarkable? You make a mistake, and you could do that work 3 times, you'll make the same mistake 3 times over. It's just...
Well, one mistake nobody will ever make will be questioning anything that Charley Steiner has to say.
No, it's going to be very interesting about his take on it. What do you think about this Brian Flores thing? I mean,
well, let's talk about Brian Flores later. We got to get to Charley Steiner.
All right, cool. Let's bring Charley on. I'd like to hear his take on the Super Bowl and sports in general.
Derek, can we get the legendary voice of everything, Charley?
The voice of everything.
Charley Steiner. How are you?
Not available.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Another day in Groundhog Year.
Yep. You remember Billy?
Good to see you again, Charley. Thanks for coming.
Very well.
And Derek, how do you like the updated studio?
This is very impressive. This is really high tech. Yeah, the whole TV set is a backdrop. That's very impressive.
Got jokes too, huh?
I got a million of them. Unfortunately, none of them are very good.
Yeah. Well, do you recall the first Super Bowl? How old were you? What were you doing? Where did you watch it?
Wow.
Oh, yeah. And the big question was I going to watch it on CBS or NBC?
That's correct.
You had, I think, the first two Super Bowls were done by the two networks, and the Super Bowl, if you recall, was as much a curiosity as anything else. You had the American Football League, the National Football League, and I was originally a New York Titans fan.
Yeah.
So you
I
were
was
the one.
an NFL guy.
The polographs.
And I remember the first two, but the one I guess I remember best was Super Bowl III, the Jets and the Colts, and what an upset that was.
The I guarantee game.
Were you at Bradley then? Were you in college?
Yeah, and the best part was, it was January 12th, 1969, and I went to school in the Midwest in Peoria at Bradley University, and the AFL was in the Midwest not thought of very highly because they didn't have any AFL teams, and so where I went to school, it was Bears country, an NFL country, and I guess I was in my sophomore or junior year, and I remember it was bitterly cold, and I was, a Jet fan, and there was Joe Namath, and I bet like $20, and $20 in January of 1969 as a sophomore or junior in college was a hell of a lot of money, and so I had the Jets, and I was so, and there was such animosity between AFL fans and NFL fans because the AFL was like Rodney, they didn't get no respect. So I bet this fella named Mike Sujet, who lived across the street, this $20, and the Jets are winning at halftime, and it's bitterly cold. But of course, I went across the street to remind him that the Jets were actually winning at the half. In my bare feet. I had socks on, but no shoes. But it was like 20-something degrees. And, when you're a junior in college, you're inherently stupid. And so, I'm talking trash at halftime, but feeling pretty good. Now the Jets win 16-7. And, Joe Willie and predicting the outcome or guaranteeing the outcome. That was actually one of the most joyous days I had as a sports fan. Here I am as a kid from the East Coast in the Midwest in NFL country, and the AFL upstart Jets won. And that, I think, was the beginning, the true beginning of what the Super Bowl would eventually become.
Yeah,
because the first two were curiosities, and nobody's going to beat the Packers or Chiefs, but the Chiefs eventually, of course, who won. But it was Joe Willie and his
swagger.
Yeah, he had the it back. And it's funny because now they're with Joe Burrow, who's got that same kind of self-assuredness. I keep hearing Namath's name attached to Burrow, and I guess what we come to learn as we get older, fellas, is that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Yeah.
So Joe Willie has morphed into Joe Burrow, and what Burrow has done for the Bengals is essentially what Namath did for the Jets, and I guess that was the high water mark in the history of the Jet franchise, beating the Colts, who were heavily favored, 16-7. That was a great day.
Yeah, we wrote about that in our book, Lamar's Gamble. We probably should have lunch this week, and I'll bring you a copy.
I'm starving to death already.
I'll bring you a copy of Lamar's Gamble, because Lamar's Gamble was a book that Billy and I wrote, our second book. But the Super Bowl, first two weren't even called the Super Bowl. They were just called the AFC NFC Championship game.
Exactly.
And Roselle's kid said, why don't you call this? They were bouncing.
Lamar's kid.
Lamar Hunt.
Lamar
Yeah,
Hunt's
kid,
kid
yeah.
was.
At the Super Bowl.
What is that? You
sounds
bounce
like
in the
crazy.
Super Bowl,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, the journalists loved it because it was Super Bowl instead of AFL, NFC Championship, and inches
And
and
it was
everything.
easy to
Inches and
say.
everything.
It was easy to say. The
Yes.
Super Bowl.
And the inches.
Yeah, it was
and
Lamar Hunt's kid.
Yep.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the first year out there, Charlie, the first year, they couldn't give those tickets away. I mean,
No, and they had two networks covering it. It was, again, watching since the first Super Bowl.
I mean,
Where we are now,
the three of us.
the only thing they have in common is they play on a 100-yard field.
Yeah,
yeah,
the three of us have seen all 55 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Even the year you were in Vietnam, you saw the Super Bowl, probably, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. We were tuned into it. I mean, we didn't get television, but we were tuned into the radio, listening to every play. But, I mean, the tickets, I think, for the first Super Bowl were about $15, $12.
But between $12
Frank was
and
saying they
$40.
get $4,000 for parking. Parking.
Oh, the
$4,000.
average ticket price for the game on Sunday is, about 10 grand?
Oh,
Wow.
I think more than that. I think face value is $4,000. So
I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm just an old coot. I don't get that.
I don't either.
I would rather watch it like Johnny Ben said on my sofa in the 50-yard sofa in my living room.
Absolutely. And, with the advent of television, you can pause if you really have to go to the job. You don't have that luxury if you're sitting among 80,000 people.
Which after 55 Super Bowls, we have to go more and more often.
You're onto something there, too. So that pause button becomes an invaluable tool.
Without a doubt.
So, Charlie, we first met at the Super Bowl in 1982, January of 1982 in New Orleans.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that?
I have vivid memories of that Super Bowl. And most of it was before the game was played. That was the week, I believe it was a Wednesday night, that you had the Raiders.
Right.
And on a Wednesday night, scandal surrounded and clouded the Super Bowl. John Matuzak, the Twos, went to a bar, the Absinthe House, breaking curfew after 11 o'clock on this Wednesday night to go do and what he normally did on Wednesdays before games, get himself good and obliterated with alcohol.
I mean, he was oiling the machine.
That's good. That's why you're a producer.
Yep.
That's very rare. So now all of a sudden we had a scandal. We had a breaking story. First, to find the Absinthe House, which is now somewhat of a landmark in New Orleans. Always was, but its reputation was tarnished by the Twos. And so that was a big story. And for breaking curfew, he was fined $1,000.
Wow.
You can't buy a meal in New Orleans anymore. And so that was the big story. And Frank, as you know, you were there with your old college buddy and my old radio partner, Jay Thomas. And so that's the first time you and I met. And now here's Jay. God bless him. Whenever we talk, Frank, you and I, Jay comes up in conversation just because he's Jay. I see him on the day of the Super Bowl in the lobby of, I assume it was a Superdome hotel. And he's scalping tickets. He's scalping Super Bowl tickets.
With me next to him.
Yes. And I said to Jay, had he just started with Mork and Mindy?
I think he was just finishing Mork and Mindy. He had finished Mork and Mindy.
Okay, so now he has become somewhat of, I wouldn't call him a television star yet, but he was on television, on a big show. And he's got, I don't know, 3, 4 tickets, whatever. And he's scalping tickets. And I say, Jay, come here. You're on television, for Christ's sake. You want to be scalping tickets? Is this a good look? And Jay, who had a hunger and a hankering for money, yeah. And so, and that was where you and I met. And Jay was hawking his tickets for whatever amount of money he got. You know, imagine if he had those tickets now, he'd get $100,000.
Well, we sold 4 the night before for $120. We made $80 profit a piece, and we sold 2 on the day of the game for $30, $10 under face value. Because
you're a regular StubHub before.
But we first met at Jay's house, where his mother was serving pies.
Yes,
that she made.
You know,
pecan pies, and Jay says, "Look at the bottom. They got the bakery's name on the pie tin."
Details. That's why he was an actor and you were a producer.
Well, Jay's son JT will be on with us in 2 weeks, so I'm sure he'll have some stories. But
that money got him through school.
Yep. But speaking of getting through school, I mean, I just want to go back to Bradley University. Charlie was a graduate of Bradley University, and he funded the Charley Steiner School of Journalism.
Nice.
At Bradley University. So
it's something I'm really proud of, actually.
I take
it's a hell of a legacy.
Yeah, well,
got 120 students there now. I mean, I've got a faculty. When I had to face the faculty when I was a student, I was this far from being thrown out of school. Yeah. Now I have a faculty. But it's really been a wonderful experience, and actually now the next step in our progression, they're going to establish a master's program.
Wow.
So
that's great.
It's really cool.
Jay Thomas, who never met a story he didn't like, always said he always talked about your money. Believe it or not, because he was
my money.
Yeah, he said, of course, Charley Steiner gave $1 million or so. He's got so much fucking money. He never got married. He never got divorced. He's got money from. He still hasn't spent. Checks.
Well, hold on a minute. Jay may have been the most frugal son of a bitch I ever met in my life.
The cheapest man in the world.
I said that 100 times.
Yeah. So when I hear that, I know that's a load of shit. But again, Jay, as he was with you, was a dear friend right to the very end. And so when we started talking about doing our little conversation today, that was one of the first things I remembered about the years and the seasons I covered the Super Bowl was my former radio partner, burgeoning television star, hawking tickets in the lobby of the hotel, and the twos at the Avison House.
Yeah, I think it was 1990. What is it? 1990. One of the Rose Bowls, 91, I think. Whatever it was at the Rose Bowl. I went with Jay, and I went with Artis Gilmore, and a few other friends, and it was jam packed getting in to the Rose Bowl, and I said, "Oh, geez, what are we going to do if we get separated?" And Jay said, "Let's just meet at Artis."
Right on the money.
Right on the money. Let's just meet at Artis, because Artis was 7'2", he was towering above everybody else. You could always see Artis.
He was a walking Eiffel Tower.
Yes. So, what are the memories do you have of past Super Bowls?
I remember the next one, I guess it was, at the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan. And the weather the entire week was horrible. Wind chills of 20, 30 below. And normally we would go to the stadiums to talk to the players outside, the nascent days of media day. But it was so cold, whatever pregame events took place was inside this massive hotel. So we never left the hotel for 5 days, except for the day of the game. And one of the things I came to learn in that Super Bowl, stay away from the lobster the night before a Super Bowl in Pontiac, Michigan, because it will not agree with you. And so I had this lobster dish, middle of the night.
Well, Detroit's known for its lobster.
Yeah.
That's how fucking stupid I was.
Right out of the Great Lakes.
So I order this thing, and let me put it to you this way. If I had been the maid who came in to clean up my room the morning of the Super Bowl, I would have quit on the spot. It was brutal. So now we go to the Silverdome. And, people are beginning, again, it's bitterly cold. We got there early, me and a couple of producers. And in those days, you were allowed to do these little 3 or 4 minute updates in game for your particular network. And so I would basically my head was in my chest. I didn't know what planet I was on. And 2 or 3 minutes before I went on the air, I got nudged. I mentioned whatever was going on in the previous hour, what the score was, and then went right back. It was just as difficult an assignment as I ever had. But the thing that, thankfully, we got to the stadium early enough. Again, it was like 21 below zero. The wind chill was hideous. And President Bush was coming to the game. And so traffic and everything was stopped until Bush got inside the stadium. So people were outside in the cold, waiting, frozen to death, until they were finally able to get in. And it was a grand experiment, the first cold weather Super Bowl that didn't work out particularly well. It turned out to be a wonderful game. But again, the thing I remember is lobster.
Charlie, what year were you the play-by-play voice for the Jets?
Jets, 86, 87. I had previously done the Generals, 83, 84, 85. Then the Jets, 86, 87. And then by 88, I was up to ESPN.
So in 87, your rivals, the Giants, made the Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, they did. And I grew up in New York, and I was a Jet fan, but I did not dislike that a double entendre. I was okay with the Giants, right? Because
New York boy.
One of the first games I remember was the Giants and Colts, and Alan the Horse Amici was 57.
It's also in our book.
57, yeah.
See, we're just wandering down memory lane.
Yep.
Aimless, but we're wandering down.
Well, that's what we do. We aimlessly wander through life.
Well, we've made a killing, haven't we?
Yes.
I grew up as a Giant fan, but I loved the Jets. I mean, I loved the whole Namath persona and the AFL. I thought it was great for football. And to this day, I still root for the Giants and Jets. Whereas if you're an Islander fan in New York, you hate the Rangers hate the Islanders. A lot of Giant fans hate the Jets. I don't feel like that. I kind of like, it's a New York.
Yeah, again, I was of the age when the AFL came in. I thought, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I liked the ABA. That was cool. I liked, the new kids on the block. And it was just, and then in 62, morphing off into another thought. In 62, when the Mets were born, I'm 13 years old, and here's a team that has been, I'm older than the team. I'm thinking, well, okay, I'm going to be a Met fan after the Dodgers left Brooklyn behind.
Yeah, and I started rooting for the Mets because they brought Willie Mays back, and I was a big Giant fan when I was a kid. When the Giants were still in the Polo Grounds. I loved the Giants.
Mets first.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to go to Ebbets Field and the Polo Grounds, and and in 72, the Giants were playing up in New Haven.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
they were
right.
playing in the Yale Bowl.
That's right.
Exactly. And I was doing local radio in New Haven. I don't know, 23, 24 years old, whatever it was. And now all of a sudden, I'm covering the Giants. And I don't have to drive anywhere. They've come up to me. And it was, they had Alex Webster and, it was.
Yeah, Gifford and Sam Huff and
Absolutely.
Schaffner, Del Schaffner.
Yeah, Schaffner.
Yeah.
You know, I was
Number
about 7 years
85, Del
old.
Schaffner.
I was about 7 years old in my neighborhood in the Bronx, and I'd walk over to Fordham University and watch the Giants practice on Saturday. They
Yeah.
used to practice in Fordham's Field. No
Again,
security, no nothing. Just walk in and watch them practice.
now you can't get in without credentials and all of this other stuff. Again, a simpler time, but you also had more access to the players, and the relationships between players and media were,
You know what blows
Part
my
of the
mind,
deal.
Charlie? When I was a bookmaker, this is 30 years ago. When I was a bookmaker, everything was clandestine. And the old school bookmakers, they wouldn't even talk about gambling. Now they advertise it on television. It blows my mind.
I don't understand it. Again, I've never been much for gambling, and they always talk about the throwing games and all of that. And now it's encouraged, except for Steve Mariucci standing at a blackboard once a day saying, don't spend what you don't have.
Yeah.
Well, gee, thanks. It's like selling a carton of cigarettes and saying, it might cause you ill health.
Just say no.
Just say no.
Yeah.
Hey, Charlie, I want to get off on another subject because you mentioned going to ESPN. This year, Al Michaels and Chris Collingsworth are doing the game, I believe, not Nance and Romo. Mike Tirico is going to take over for Al Michaels next year. Is that true?
That's my understanding. And I think Al really he's sitting pretty. Amazon would like him. I gather ESPN has expressed interest. And Al, he's 77 now. And I was thinking the other day, he is really at the pantheon of one of the all-time great.
Yes,
without a doubt.
He is. He's on a Mount Rushmore of announcers for sure.
Yeah, and so this will be his last Super Bowl by any standard, unless Amazon happens to get one many years down the road. And so watching Al, who has done so many great events, the one thing about Al, he's nonplussed about everything. So when stuff happens in a hurry, he's able to process that stuff faster than anybody I think I've ever seen or heard. And that is just a natural gift. And I admire his work as much as anybody.
Yeah. Okay. But
It's for you.
It's for me.
You just left.
I know Al, Charlie will tell you this, but I'll tell you the audience. Al Michaels eats steak every night, and he has never eaten a vegetable in his life.
Not once.
Not one time has he ever eaten a vegetable.
I believe he goes as far as ketchup.
Ketchup. Yep. My
again, he's just so good at what he does.
Terrific.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes. It's one of those calls, kind of like Vin's, the Gibson call in a year that's been so improbable. It's just one of those iconic calls that reminds us how important a great play-by-play announcer can be in a big moment. And Al has had so many of them. And so I go back to what I said to begin. He's nonplussed. He is able to process stuff so quickly and then put these eloquent and elegant words together that remain with us for all time.
So we have Al Michaels and Vin Scully on the play-by-play Mount Rushmore. Who else would you place on a Mount Rushmore, not counting yourself?
Oh, I'd be one of those guys. I'd sweep it up at the end of the day after people visit. Four, these days in this era, I think I could comfortably put, and people might disagree, Joe Buck. Joe is just an extraordinary talent. How many people can do 2 football games and I think 3 or 4 baseball playoff games in the space of 7 or 8 days? I mean, what he did in that period of time was remarkable.
I'll tell you who also could do it, Jim Nance.
Yes.
Jim Nance does the Super Bowl, the NCAA playoffs, the Masters golf. Sometimes he does them all in the same week. Not the Super Bowl, of course, but
so those are the guys, because what they all have in common is they make a very difficult
job
endeavor simple. Yeah, they make the complicated simple, free, easy, comfortable. Those are skills that I aspire to, wish I had, but then I look at those guys and okay. It reminds me again, talking about Jay Thomas, way back, just before he got the Mork and Mindy thing, and he was, we were doing the radio together, and he wanted to be a comedian, and he would go to those comedy clubs and try to be a comedian. So we decide we would go to, what was the name of the place?
Improv?
No, it was the nightclub where Robin Williams was performing. And we didn't know much about Robin Williams, the Coca. And we didn't know that much about him as a stand-up guy, but we knew him on television. So let's go. We go. And we see Robin Williams for the first time, not knowing what we were going to have happen to us. And we watch, and it was just the most unbelievable, it was early Robin Williams, and not knowing what to expect, it blew us away. Now the show is over, and Jay is manifestly depressed as we're taking a cab back to our respective apartments on the Upper West Side. I said, "Why are you so upset?" He said, "If this is what I have to compete against, to be a comedian in this business, I'm in the wrong business."
Yeah.
2 weeks later, he gets a call to go out and audition for Mork and Mindy, and he gets the job, and that would be the beginning at the end of our radio partnership. And so it's that kind of thing. When I see Al do his best, or Nance do his best, Joe do his best, I look at them and I just tip my hat and say, "Man, you guys are really good." So
yep.
I think those are 3 that really stand out these days.
Well,
but then you go back, you have a Kurt Gowdy who was able to do anything and everything, and Keith Jackson. I mean, so there are very few who can be transcendent voices in calling games, and they're not just in one sport.
Well, if anything's a testament to what you just said, and this is my own personal opinion, but I was watching the Manning brothers trying to do play-by-play and color, and man, they were going down faster than the fat boy on a seesaw. I mean, there's no way. I said, these guys belong doing this job. I mean, you want to pass the hat for them or run a racket for them or something, but they were terrible. I mean, you do appreciate people like Michaels and Gowdy and, just professionals.
The ability to make the complicated simple, and they never get flustered.
And Vin knew when to stop talking.
That's the key. Well, again, radio and television are entirely different disciplines. Television, your best friend is the picture. On radio, your best friend is the ambient crowd noise. And so you play to one strength or the other. On radio, you can take a deep breath between pitches or plays. On television, the key is less is more. Let the picture tell the story, and then you add that extra layer. Do you believe in miracles in a year that's so improbable? So they're different disciplines. I guess, it's like playing hoops, half court or full court. You're still playing the game, but it's a different process as the game unfolds.
Well, I know we're up against the time clock because your cleaning lady's coming at 11, and
you are heavily researched.
we have to be off before the cleaning lady comes. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things, and I want a baseball question to close it out. Are you picking anyone in this game?
Oh, you mean Sunday?
Yeah.
I find myself rooting for the Bengals. I mean, again, I have no horse in the race, but who doesn't love an underdog?
Yeah.
And in LA, the Rams, what they did, it seems to me, they mortgaged their future for the present. They've got a cavalcade of all-stars there, and Cooper Kupp, who,
Eastern Washington.
I love him.
Yep.
We had Wayne Corbett with the Jets from Hofstra, who had a nice little career from, an unlikely football source. But I have no horse in the race. I just want to be entertained. And so I find myself mildly rooting for the Bengals. And my radio producer, Dwayne McDonald, is from Cincinnati. And he reminds me every year how Cincinnati is just ain't that good. And here they are now. So I'm rooting for them and for him.
So this just in, a friend of Mick and Mook and Mike, who's also a friend of yours, Joe West, is predicting, Cowboy Joe West is predicting Cincinnati Bengals will win the Super Bowl as well. So,
well, he is from that part of the country. Went to what? Elon College?
Yeah, well, Elon College is in North Carolina, but yes.
Yeah, we're close enough to think. We're close enough as we are.
Yeah, and he said he met you the first time at Mike Shannon's in St. Louis. Mike Shannon's restaurant.
Joe had a great run, the Cowboy. I'll tell you what, whenever I saw him in a restaurant on the road back in the days when we traveled, he always bought. So to him,
yep.
I am forever indebted for many a good meal.
Yep. And he just retired, and some clown in New York said now that he's retired, he's going to start the campaign to keep Joe West out of the Hall of Fame. That writer can go fuck himself as far as I'm concerned.
Why? I mean, what is that all about?
I don't know. It's just by some guy trying to get his name in the paper. 5,860 games or something umpired.
I think he belongs.
He belongs. He belongs.
Just for longevity, if nothing else.
Yep. And finally, are you ever going to go back to work with the Dodgers?
Eventually. I think it's later rather than sooner. I find myself a little bit wistful this year because I covered every work stoppage from 80-81 through 94. Back in the day when they actually had head-to-head and face-to-face negotiations. See, I lived in the lobby of the Doral Hotel on the east side of Manhattan, and they would come down and have, say a few things, handheld microphones. It wasn't nearly as technically elaborate as it is now. But this is just about money, and lots of money. And I think there are no free agency issues per se as there were, 40, 50 years ago.
Yep.
And so when you get into a lockout, strike, whatever it is, you go into a black hole. and you don't know when you've reached bottom. And so there's so much uncertainty from either side. I don't know that the owners are terribly unified. You got the haves and have-nots. I don't know that the players are terribly unified. You have the haves and the have-nots. What does Max Scherzer have to do with Sheldon Noisy?
Yeah.
Nothing. What do the Pirates have in common with
the Dodgers?
With the Dodgers
Or the Yankees, yeah.
Nothing. Yeah. So I am not terribly optimistic that this thing is going to get settled anytime soon. And, football, which now has its own issues, has had a pretty bad week between Dan Snyder and Brian Flores. The Friday press conference before a Super Bowl is kind of like a State of the Union. I don't envy Roger Goodell at the press conference on Friday.
Well, his answers will be predictable. They're
going to be predictable, but I don't know that the difference between predictable and acceptable
are two different things.
Yeah, so I think he's going to have a tough day.
Well, it'll be interesting to see between now and that Friday if anybody hires a black head coach. That'll take a little of the curse off of the
I will say this, and again, I am of that age where Muhammad Ali was as important a figure, let alone sports figure, in growing up, and I had a chance to know him reasonably well toward the end. Brian Flores did a Muhammad Ali this week. He put it all on the line. He put his career on the line as Ali did. Ali had to sit out for 3.5 years. And Flores right now has he's put it all on the line, and I didn't really know very much about him other than he was the coach of the Dolphins, and prior to that with the Patriots. But he's a man, and I am an unabashed fan of Flores, who to me in 2021, now 2022. He's done in this generation what Ali did in 67, 68, 69, 70, 71.
Yeah, but I hope what happens to him will not be what happened to Kurt Flood.
Yes.
What happened to Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
And I hope he's not just the next in a long line of scapegoats for the NFL.
Well, again, and that goes back to what we're talking about. Friday, I'd be fascinated to watch and listen to Goodell tap dance through that, and Dan Snyder and all the craziness that's going on in Washington. You're supposed to build up your product 2 days before the Super Bowl, and he'll be on defense all day.
Yeah,
he learned some of that $29 million he makes a year or whatever.
29. He couldn't live on 29. He makes $40 million.
$40 million a year. Well, he'll be tap dancing. All right, I tap dance for $40 million myself with no problem.
Derek, you have a final question for Charlie?
I don't know if my questions are pertinent. I do want to know if the cleaning lady is code.
Oh,
if she's code, if that's code for somebody else visiting.
Carmen comes every Saturday morning at 11. She may be the most important woman in my life.
Yeah.
No, it's not code.
Yeah,
it's Carmen.
Derek.
All right, and then one more question. You don't have to really elaborate too much, but I'm curious. You mentioned the preparation that it takes for a commentator. Mm-hmm. So how much preparation do you have to put in for each game, or a game?
Baseball?
Yeah, sure. Baseball.
Football. Let's talk
about football. Football's good.
Again, they're entirely different disciplines. In football, you've got 1 week to prepare for 2 teams, and in the NFL, you've seen at least one of them a lot. And so the preparation begins on Monday or Tuesday, and many hours go into that 3-hour radio or television broadcast. Baseball, when you got 162, although I'm doing less than that now, you've got 3 or 4 days with the same team. And so it's more of a an additional page in your preparation, whereas football, you've got a week for one game. I get up in the morning for a baseball game, 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'll scour the internet and jot down some notes. I leave the house around 2:15. I'm in the booth around 3 o'clock and then continue more notes. It's not necessarily statistics as it is anecdotes, stories that we might be able to include in a given moment somewhere. But, the real work is the hours, and in football's case, the days leading up to the game itself.
Yeah, you have a production meeting with the players, with the coaches, and don't you?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
No, that's all. COVID has changed everything. The relationships that we used to have with players, coaches, managers doesn't exist anymore. That's just how the game has evolved. Life has evolved. COVID has evolved. So the days of just going down there and talking in the clubhouse, in the manager's office, in the coach's office, simply doesn't exist anymore.
Wow, that's too bad.
That is.
Derek?
That's it.
I mean, Billy?
Just, do you still have any of favorites teams? You still a Giant fan? You still a Jet fan? Or you just...
You better say he's a Dodger fan.
Well, yes, I am. The great thing is I grew up a Brooklyn Dodger fan. So,
Right.
it's like your first love. So, yes, I have an emotional tie to the Dodgers, but they're also my employer. So, yes, I would love to see him win. But one of the things, when I did SportsCenter for all those years, where I had to know everything about everybody on every team every day, that was really the hard part. But when I left ESPN, my goodness, in 2002, I stopped being a sports fan because I drowned in it. And it was great. It was a wonderful way to make a living. So when I'm not working, the thought of going to the Super Bowl that's just not going to happen. Because I did go to one game this year and had in one of those fancy suites at SoFi, and it was really nice. And I forgot or didn't realize what it was like to be a fan at a game. So now it's more.
You'd rather stay home.
Well, like the kid whose daddy used to be a candy store. Owns a candy store. I had enough of it.
Yeah, you don't want the Three Musketeers every day.
You'd rather stay home, watch the game, and go to the bathroom at will.
With the pause button.
All right.
Interesting take, Charlie. Thanks
so much, Charlie. I'll give you a call. Hopefully, we'll have lunch this week.
I look forward to it, Frank. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, pal.
That's interesting what Charlie was saying. When I was always a Giant fan growing up as a kid because 6 or 7 years old, Giants were in Yankee Stadium. They were the team, and then when the Jets came into. But once I started bookmaking, all affiliations to any team went out the window. I became a Green fan. If I needed against the Giants, I'd be rooting like hell against the Giants because money.
Yeah.
Your job,
Yeah.
And like he said, you get a belly full of it. He had enough of it,
Yeah.
What do you think about the Brian Flores thing? What do you think about it? I mean, obviously, what he said.
I hope he doesn't turn into a Colin Kaepernick or Kurt Flood. It's sad. I mean, Hugh Jackson says the owner of the Cleveland Browns offered him $100,000 or paid him $100,000 for every game he lose. Brian Flores didn't take that bet,
but was offered it.
He
100,000 again.
I'm going to say allegedly was offered it. I don't think allegedly has anything to do with it. I think he was offered it, but it's a sign of the times.
I mean, it's a hell of an accusation to make. So you got to figure that he was offered it, But it's beyond the racial thing, and that's, they do a lot for show, the NFL. But you talk about the owners themselves, You're talking about the most exclusive club in the United States.
Well, we wrote about it in the Lamar's Gamble.
Right there in
available on Amazon.
And who is going to fix the game if not the owner, if anybody? I mean, they're beyond scrutiny because they hire Goodell. They're the ones that are paying his salary. Is he going to investigate the owners? Am I going to investigate the boss?
If he does, he's going to seal the records like they did with Dan Snyder of the Washington Commodores. By the way, how many millions and millions of dollars went into that name, Washington Commodores?
How much thought went into it is what I want to know. After 2 years, that's the best they could come up with, the Washington Commodores?
I thought it was the Washington Commodes. I really did.
But, you get back to Lamar's gamble, and we infer, and we talk about it. We don't infer. We out and out say that the owners have more control over it than anybody else.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's 100 senators in this country. There's 50 governors, and there's only 32 owners of NFL teams.
Yeah, and like somebody jokingly said, they have 32 Republicans trying to act democratically.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Most exclusive club in the world.
All right. So let's get down to it. Super Bowl Sunday, -4.5. The Rams are favored. Now you've got to go with your pick, Billy.
Well, my pick, and it has, I couldn't tell
Based
you-
on the lines, based on what you're reading?
Based on numbers, totally on numbers. I mean, I see 4.5s out there with 9 out of 10 bookmakers got 4.5. Some people have 4, lay 120. So in other words, you got to lay 4,200 to win. I'm sorry, 4,800 to win 4,000. Lay 120. But my cute guy.
By the way, if you win, you could pay for your parking spot.
Yeah. My cute guy's got lay 05. So he's telling you, come on, bet me the Rams. So my guy is sharp. He's like a wise guy bookie. When he gets wise guy money, I would take the 4.5. I think Cincinnati's a solid bet. But I know the whole country's rooting for Cincinnati because, like Charlie says, everybody loves an underdog.
So you got Cincinnati?
I'll take Cincinnati.
I got the Rams.
You're taking it. You jumped a little quick there.
Always go against Billy.
You were a little froggy there. You jumped a little quick. I don't know.
Well,
so you like the Rams?
Yeah,
They're at home.
And they're at home.
And of course, I would think the NFL wants them to win because of the massive investment and the fact that they're
Well, I think the NFL
LA is a bigger market.
I think the NFL's already made their money. They if the Rams made the Super Bowl, the NFL is happy.
Who do the refs like, Frank? That's what I want.
Well, there you go.
That's what I want to know.
There you go.
And somebody explain to me what is defensive holding on the interior line. I want to know what that means.
It's crazy.
When I hear defensive holding, I go like, I don't even know what that means.
It's crazy. Well, that was a really, really good show. Charlie was a great guest.
Yeah, he's
enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yes.
Have a great day. Load up your house on chips and everything Derek doesn't eat. And
if you're going to make a bet, take it before a bookie. Just make a mind bet. This way, all you can lose is your mind.
So long,
Don't
everybody.
lose any money. Take care.
Next week's guest, actress, Growing Pains, director, A Million Little Things, Grey's Anatomy, High School Musical, Joanna Kearns.
We'll see you next week.